It happened on a Wednesday morning, the kind where the air still feels heavy with last night's rain, and the neighborhood is quiet except for the hum of lawnmowers in the distance. I was sipping coffee on my porch when I saw the mail truck pull up in front of Karen's house. Our HOA president had a way of making everything about her rules. Fines, even the colors people could paint their doors, but I never expected her to turn the federal mail system into her next stage. The carrier, a tall man in a neat USPS uniform, stepped out with a thick, certified letter in his hand. He barely got 3 steps up her walkway before Karen came storming out like a hurricane in human form. "What do you think you're doing?" she barked, planting herself between him and the door. He calmly said, "Ma'am, I have a certified delivery for you. Please sign here." But Karen wasn't having it. "You can't just walk onto my property. That's trespassing. I'm the president of this HOA and I can ban whoever I want from this neighborhood." Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass, and I could see the poor guy's jaw tighten. He tried again, polite but firm. "Ma'am, this is official correspondence. I'm required by law to deliver it in person." Karen's eyes narrowed. "I don't care if it's from the President of the United States." And then she did something so absurd I nearly dropped my mug. She shoved him, not hard enough to knock him over, but enough to cross a line. The man stepped back, squared his shoulders, and in a voice that could command a room said, "Ma'am, I'm a federal agent. You've just assaulted a federal officer." The silence that followed was deafening. Karen blinked, clearly thinking he was bluffing. "You're a mailman," she scoffed. But he reached into his vest, pulled out a badge that gleamed in the morning light, and held it up for her to see. "U.S. Postal Inspector's Office," he said. "And this isn't just mail, it's a federal subpoena. For you." From my porch, I could see the color drain from her face. Her mouth opened, then closed, as he held the envelope out again. "You can sign for it now, or I'll note that you refused delivery. Either way, you're served." She took it with a trembling hand, muttering something about needing to speak to her attorney. But the damage was already done. That's when the twist walked into view. 2 men in dark suits stepping out of the black SUV parked down the street. They moved like they'd been there the whole time, just waiting for the right moment. One flashed credentials. "Ma'am, we're with the U.S. Attorney's Office. That subpoena relates to an ongoing investigation into HOA financial misconduct. We'll need to ask you some questions." Karen's voice rose into that shrill register we all knew too well. "You can't just ambush me like this. This is harassment." But they were calm, professional, and utterly unmoved. "You can answer here," one said, "or we can arrange to do it downtown." By now, a handful of neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, whispering and filming. My phone buzzed with texts from across the street. "What's happening? And is that the FBI?" Karen tried to recover, straightening her blouse like nothing had happened. "Fine, but I want my lawyer present." The agent nodded. "That's your right. We'll be in touch to schedule your interview." Then he glanced at the postal inspector. "Thanks, Mike. We'll take it from here." Mike the mailman gave a quick nod, turned, and walked back to his truck. As he passed my house, I caught his eye and mouthed, "Nice work." He gave the faintest smile before driving off. Karen stood in her driveway clutching the subpoena like it might burn her. The men in suits left a few minutes later, but not before making sure she knew this wasn't going away. Do you want me to continue with the next 2,000 words where the investigation unravels her scheme, the neighborhood turns on her, and her final downfall is even more public than her arrest that morning? The neighborhood was buzzing within an hour of that scene. Videos from at least 3 different angles hit the local Facebook group before lunchtime, and by the afternoon, a community gossip page had picked it up with the headline, "HOA President shoves federal agent, gets served in her own driveway." Even people who normally stayed out of HOA drama couldn't look away. That evening, I ran into my neighbor, Denise, walking her dog. She leaned in and whispered, "You know this isn't about just one incident, right? I heard from my cousin at the county clerk's office Karen's been moving HOA funds into a maintenance account that doesn't exist on paper." I didn't know if it was true yet, but it fit the pattern. The next week brought confirmation. The U.S. Attorney's Office officially announced that the subpoena was part of a joint federal and state investigation into embezzlement, mail fraud, and abuse of authority within our HOA, and Karen wasn't just a person of interest, she was the central figure. The news trucks rolled in before the ink on the press release had dried. Still, Karen tried to play Queen Bee. She called an emergency HOA meeting at the clubhouse, clearly hoping to rally whatever loyalists she had left. I went out of curiosity, as did most of the neighborhood. She walked in wearing a bright red power suit, her chin high, acting as if the past week had been a minor inconvenience. "These accusations are baseless," she announced, slapping a stack of papers on the table. "A political smear campaign. We will not be intimidated." Before she could get further, the door opened and in walked the same two men in suits from her driveway, along with a woman carrying a laptop and a stack of files. "Sorry to interrupt," the taller agent said, "but this meeting is now part of an active investigation. Ma'am, we have a search warrant for the HOA's financial records." You could feel the air shift. Her supporters melted into their seats. Karen's face froze in that strained smile, but her eyes were darting like trapped prey. "They began going through the records right there in front of us. And with every document pulled, the story got worse. Tens of thousands of dollars in security fees to shell companies tied to Karen's relatives. Fake repair contracts for work that never happened. Invoices for landscaping equipment that never existed. The kicker? Payments for consulting to an out-of-state account that, according to the agent, was already linked to other fraud cases. Then came the twist that sealed her fate. The woman with the laptop tapped the screen and turned it toward the crowd. "This," she said, "is a copy of an email sent from the HOA president's personal account, directing funds to be transferred immediately after she received notice of this investigation. The timestamp? 2 days before the subpoena delivery." You could hear people gasp. Karen's mouth worked silently before she muttered something about taking it out of context. By the end of the meeting, the agents had boxed up every financial record. Karen had been escorted out after being informed she was now facing obstruction charges, and the HOA board, what was left of it, voted to suspend her indefinitely. The weeks that followed were a slow, public unraveling. The investigation revealed that Karen had siphoned over $180,000 from HOA funds in just 3 years, using intimidation and fake rule enforcement to cover her tracks. Multiple residents filed separate civil suits for harassment and emotional distress. The postal inspector's office added additional charges for interference with federal duties. The shove that started it all wasn't just a bad look. It was a felony. Her trial was a spectacle. I attended one day with a group of neighbors, and we watched as witness after witness testified not just about the money, but about the fear she'd cultivated. Seniors afraid to plant flowers without permission. Parents told they couldn't have birthday parties in their own backyards. Families fined hundreds for violations that didn't exist. The jury didn't take long. Guilty on all counts. The judge's sentence was as sharp as his tone. 4 years in federal prison, restitution of the stolen funds, and a permanent ban from serving in any HOA or community leadership role. The day she was taken away, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. People waved more. Kids played on lawns without worrying about noise ordinances. And the mailbox where this whole thing began became something of a landmark. A neighbor even made a little plaque that read, "Here stood the Queen of Fines, overthrown by the Mailman King." As for the mailman agent, Mike came by one Saturday after she was sentenced. Not in uniform, just a friendly visit. He shook my hand, laughed at the stories we told, and said, "Honestly, I've served a lot of subpoenas, but that one's going in my memoir." Now, when I look back on that rainy Wednesday, I think about how quickly arrogance can flip to downfall. Karen thought she was untouchable, above both neighbors and the law. She found out she wasn't above either. If someone like Karen tried to bully and control your community, would you take the risk to stand against them or wait, hoping someone else would?